Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Clockwork Game Dev Show. It has been a little while since I've done one of these game designy, conversation-y chat type things. I think we got the chat box open. Should be working. I had some technical difficulties today getting started, but I think please let me know how my audio is. I might have to ride the fader a little bit or something, but let me know how it is, how it sounds. I may have to adjust my settings and stuff. Yeah, today I'm going to be talking about Magic the Gathering, and which I've been playing a lot now for, I think, about 2 months. Never really played until 2 months ago. Like, seriously played it. Been playing a lot. I would say probably like 5 to 10, or let's say like not 5 to 10, but like 5 to 6 matches a day on average, maybe, plus deck building. Also playing a little bit in real life, like 95% on Magic the Gathering Arena. Just some basic facts. Keep the Fence Trash Game stream. Whoa, here we go. I'm gonna put that as the subtitle if you don't mind. Cool. All right, so yeah, these are some basic facts about me. I've always been skeptical of games like this, of collectible card games, since they appeared. I think probably for different reasons, but my two biggest complaints and concerns about collectible card games, historically, my biggest concerns / complaints about CCGs were bad business model, booster packs, etc. Audio sounds okay, by the way. This is brand new, fresh. I just had to like reset up all my filters and everything because for some reason it just stopped working. Bad business model, that's part of it. I don't know if that would be like number one. Let me see if I can rank them. But bad business model is one of them. Too random, definitely one of them. Customizability felt like a lie to me. Sounds okay. Okay, good. I will explain this later a little bit more. Well, also too shallow, I would say. I will say this is probably the order for me. And these two are kind of the same thing. Or like they're very related anyway. Like I've always thought of it as like, I guess it would be interesting to talk about like what the game that I thought Magic was. Talk about that, because I think, you know, maybe there's some people who think that it is that still, and maybe it is that still. And maybe I'm just like kind of in a phase where I'm like not seeing it for whatever reason. You know, I thought, let's make this these fonts. Well, actually, no, I think that's probably pretty good. I thought Magic was basically like a gambling game, a highly thematic gambling game, you know, akin to poker, with, you know, like fantasy elements with a little more like role-playing flavor. Well, not a little more, a lot more, you know, with a lot of like fantasy flavor, basically. So yeah, like poker was my kind of go-to, what I thought it was like. And I think actually, like, I've been reading a little bit about the history of Magic and stuff, and I think that like when it started out, actually, that was a little, maybe that was a little bit more fair. I think over time, the game has been honed a lot. I mean, this is a similar thing that what I say about League of Legends, that, you know, they start out sometimes with these like kind of husk-like games that don't have a lot going on, and then over time they like learn like, oh, okay, this sort of leads to this kind of bad thing that we don't like, this sort of bad behavior, and so they sort of, you know, sand off some of those edges. And you could also say like did a little design work over the course of like 30 years, because Magic is very under designed, I would say. Like, okay, so this is this is like my historical, like, we'll just put this all in a background box. Because this is not really the thing I want to say today. This is more like how I have felt. So we'll start with that. And so maybe it's good to think about like, well, how do I feel about it now? I don't think that's accurate. What's not accurate? And I'll talk about this more during our stream tomorrow, but that's right, we're streaming tomorrow, everyone. Hollow and I are going to do some Star Wars CCG, which should be pretty cool. I am curious to hear what is not accurate, though. Magic isn't under-designed. It's just designed for purposes that aren't make a good strategy game. Yeah, it's designed. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, I don't know. I think... So let me copy paste what Hollow said there, because that's an interesting point, and I think that there might be something in between those 2 points that could also be true. Like it could be. I understand it's not just make a good strategy game at a sensible time. What time are we doing it tomorrow? 2? Is that sensible? I don't know. Or I forget what. Let me check my calendar. Should be able to tell you all that. Oh, 3, same time as this. Is that a not sensible time? Anyways, so it'll be the same time as this stream tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, obviously Magic is not trying to be this platonic, trying to be some platonic ideal of a strategy game. I think it is trying to be, it's trying to be the following things. I think it is a little bit trying to be a strategy game. That is one of the things that it's trying to do. It's also trying to be a like big box of Legos, like a big box of toys, right? That you can play with and, you know, put things together. Well, we could maybe move it to another time. I don't know, Hollow, if you could do like 1 or something, we could do it then, but I don't know. Yeah, or 12:30 maybe we could move it back. So yeah, big box of Legos / toys. And I also do think, you know, like, I don't know if gambling is the right, like there's a kind of animal that's like gambling strategy, you know what I mean? Like something that's kind of, it's not just like a pure gambling game, obviously, but it's also not a pure strategy game. So, but I don't know, maybe we don't need this. I think maybe just these 2 things is enough. Because I think that's the big thing that I want to get into is like, is sort of how Magic is changing my thoughts on strategy games. Because I think this is like the interesting thing to talk about. You know, is not just like Magic itself, but like what can I draw from Magic, and how does that change how you know, how I look at games in the future and my own games and things like that. So yeah, I think I would say really quick though that even with this in mind, I would still maybe say that it's a little bit under designed, especially if you're counting all of Magic. Like, trash? Who called something trash? Oh, well, I didn't say this. This was Marcus. And it's kind of a joke. I wouldn't say that. Yeah, your Tri-Brown is right. We should not call the things that we like trash, I think. And I would not call Magic trash. Like, I think just as a cultural artifact, like that's another thing that I'm kind of that I'm kind of getting struck by a lot as I'm playing, and I'm learning more about the game and more about the history and more about the strategy and everything. I'm like really appreciating magic as a human cultural artifact. Like, holy shit, this thing exists that is just like, there's such an archive of human effort, you know, of all kinds of like ingenuity and like creativity and, you know, problem solving and stories and that are related to and surrounding this thing. And so, you know, I mean, like, that's what culture is. In the same way that such things form around religions or, you know, movies or anything. And magic is a very rich, especially in the space of games where things are so consumable and so like, I don't know, like, you know, you're supposed to like make a game and then just like let it vanish into the ether and then move on to the next game. Things are very like temporary, and you know, magic sort of has that inside of it, which, you know, is not my favorite thing about magic. It has that sort of, you know, exhaustible, consumable quality within it. But if you look at it as just like its own artifact, you know, its own giant sphere of culture, it's really like, it's there's a lot to appreciate there. I think to write it all off, you know, is ignorant. It's like, you know, one of those like all social sciences are bullshit type of sentences or something. So I think that I'm appreciating that a lot more, that element of it. And, you know, as I play, I think in general my understanding and appreciation of games as time goes on is more social and more cultural. How is that different from any other art form? It's not. It's just like there kind of isn't a game like Magic. There's not really another game that's quite as big and, you know, like intersocial, like people are just, you know, like it's just inherently social in a way that a lot of games are not, because of the deck building element, because of things like the whole Friday Night Magic concept, you know, which people are doing that all the place, all of, you know, like there's a whole industry. Who was it saying this to me recently? There's an entire industry of like board game stores that like basically exist because of Magic. Like if it weren't for Magic, they wouldn't be. The way to solve the lag problem is to say what you're responding to in your comment so that I can know what you're talking about. Because like you said, I don't think that's accurate, which that would make sense if there's no, that works if there's no lag, but if there's lag at all, I have no idea which thing is not accurate. You did clarify that one, but just as a point. Yeah, so yeah, it's nothing, this is just how culture works and stuff, but Magic is a very cultural game. And part of that's its long history, and part of that's the way elements of its design. So anyways, I'm appreciating that more. But the bigger, more interesting and more Clockwork Game Dev kind of show-ish of a topic, I think, is, you know, how does this change my thoughts on strategy games and design? Because, you know, normally, or like, typically I would say this game is, how do I word this? I would typically auto reject a game with this much randomness, at least in theory. In practice, I end up really playing, or I end up playing these games more than you might, well, you know, I might expect. So like, you know, one of the biggest games I've played over the last 5 years, or yeah, 5 or 6 years, League of Legends has a similar quality, is a 10-player online, you know, strategy game. That 10-player quality means it's extremely random. Like they have like, you know, the League of Legends mana screw. There's like, yeah, I should say there's like 5 varieties of League of Legends mana screw, you know, a player on your team, you know, having a runaway, like, you know, power spike. Any player on either team disconnecting. You know, your like your lane opponent being bad, etc. Like there's just so many things that are, you know, every single League of Legends match, it's very hard to set them up in a way that's going to be kind of like fair in the way that we typically would want a strategy game to be. Join the pro lots of randomness side. I mean, I think that's kind of what I'm a little bit kind of what I'm saying. That's, you know, look at Magic the Gathering as its own artifact. Cultural artifact. I know about jokes now. You told me about them and now I know. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, so this is where I'm going. And randomness we could add here, because really that's one of the two things. I would say there's probably another heading here, and customizability, because I've been very skeptical of that as well. What's your theory of why you do not auto reject these random games? Is randomness good actually, or maybe you're addicted or something? Okay, so that's a really good question. I think probably a little of both. Like, I think, I think if I'm being honest, like, you know, in particularly in Magic, I think it is a little bit addictive in a way that, you know, other games I play, I don't know, you know, like I keep thinking about Race for the Galaxy. So here are some of the games that I've played a lot over the last few years. The games I played the most in the last 5 years or so: League of Legends, which we've already discussed. We haven't even talked about the other forms of randomness in League of Legends. League of Legends has random crits. I mean, that sounds really random. In practice, it actually doesn't really matter all that much. But, you know, just the execution of like team fights, like the stuff that happens with regards to that, extremely random. The game is super random. But the games I played the most in the last 5 years are League of Legends, Race for the Galaxy, which you might think like, oh, Race for the Galaxy, that's like, you know, that's like a Euro game. I just got here like 4 minutes ago. Did I miss anything in the first 10 minutes or so? No. I mean, I don't know, some stuff, I guess. You know, we talked about background and stuff. You can, I think you can rewind it, but yeah, you can also read some of this, probably pause it. So the games I played the most in the last 5 years. So Race for the Galaxy, because it's like sort of based on Puerto Rico, which is like this very dry and very not random Euro game. I think you might sort of think that would fall into this category of like not random games, but I actually think Race is pretty random. I mean, it's a card game for one thing, and you're drawing out of this huge deck. And a lot of times when I play Race, I play kind of from the hip, and what that means is effectively is that I'm kind of like waiting for good draws a little bit. Like I actually play it in a way that makes it even more random. Disgraced for the Galaxy. Oh no. More random. You know, it's like ultimately like I sort of play Race for the Galaxy like it's a set collection game. You know, like I'm definitely making strategic decisions and stuff, but I'm kind of like, I get a couple things going and then I like draw some cards. I'm like, oh, can I get like a super combo happening? And I'm just kind of like waiting for like, you know, these things to sort of line up and kind of come together in this. It's interesting that you could, I don't know if people would necessarily think of it this way, especially because I play against bots. So it's so fast. And I noticed that's another thing, like, you know, games against bots, you know, amenable to playing quickly from the hip, lots of matches, which is thereby and you know, kind of amenable to waiting for good rolls. Does that make sense? The Crash Mode says, Race for the Galaxy was one of my gateway game. The thing that impressed me most was the theme. Yeah, I mean, for a board game, I think Race for the Galaxy, actually overall, I think the Race for the Galaxy, the theme is good. It's, I think like the art and the UI and the graphic design and stuff are pretty like not so good, but for board games, they're pretty good, I think. Board games, I think that generally the standard for art and stuff like that is, at least, especially when Race for the Galaxy came out. Now maybe it's a little bit, it's like not, there's not as much of a discrepancy. But it used to be like, man, board games were just ugly and like had just the most boring themes imaginable. I mean, not that video games aren't ugly with boring themes also. They are too in a different way. But I mean, I think art to me is a big part of like theme and how theme expresses itself, you know? But yeah, if you're just talking about like the setting, it's like a space trading, you know, colonizing game. Like it's definitely a huge step up from especially stuff like Puerto Rico and all those kind of games. And now Magic is, I think, like, I feel like, and you know, maybe who knows, maybe in a month from now I'll be like, screw this game, I'm never playing again. But I feel like Magic is like, I'm kind of like into it, you know? So anyway, the point here is these, especially when you look at them the right way, these don't sort of like map to the, you know, the, what you would expect someone who's like preaching against randomness to be playing, I think, or preaching against too much randomness. Just to clarify, I always like to add that for me, no randomness is unacceptable. You know, I do not want to play games like chess. I do not want to play games like Prismata. Even if I can appreciate things about them, I have no interest in playing such a game. Whereas like, you know, Magic, extremely random sometimes, like, oh my God, like just so random. But yeah, so a couple of things. Let's go back to this list here and talk more about Magic. Like, what was I wrong? What was I wrong about with regards to Magic? Randomness equals good. Hearthstone equals more, is more random equals more good. See, I don't, that's obviously not true. Like, more random is definitely not more good, because then you end up just, okay, play slots. I will formally address, I think you're joking, but like, I still feel like I want to address that concept, because I feel like there are people who sort of say this kind of stuff, like in earnest. And I really do not think more random equals more good. You know, if this were true, slots would be the best game, because it's just pure randomness. Ironclad Tactics, Mojang Scrolls. Oh yeah, Mojang Scrolls. I never played that. Or Tooth and Tail based on this. Slots is a good game because it has Coin Waterfall. Coin Waterfall? What's that? I do like the... Are you talking about the thing with the coin pushers, where you push the coins over the hill? Hollow says, I mean, what this tells me is no randomness is not actually one of your values. Well, no randomness has always been illegal. Let me just like write this down real quick in red text, just so that it's like super clear. At no time, you know, like a game having no randomness has always been banned by Keith Burgun game design theory, and that has never changed. I don't think I've ever varied on that. So that's something to just throw in there. Keith was never pro no randomness, though. Thank you, Tribound. But what he always advocated for pointed towards highly brain burning games. Yeah, now this is where I want to go with this conversation, because this gets into my own games and how I make games. How much experience with Magic the Gathering did you have prior to this? Well, I said in the beginning here, I never really played it seriously. I mean, I played it, you know, a handful of matches here and there over the years, but never really played it until 2 months ago. And you know what else I also did was I played a lot of other CCGs a lot more. I played a lot of Gwent, and I played a lot of Hearthstone. I don't know if a lot, but like I tried really hard to like them. A couple others. And I sort of always assumed, well, like, these are the newer ones. So like, obviously they're better than Magic. And like, that was a terrible assumption, because they are not better than Magic. And now I've been playing pretty intensely for the last couple months. Like, I just kind of want to play it all the time. Yeah. So what this tells me is no randomness is not actually one of your values. Being able to play on a match on short notice is. Yes, that is practical. Practicality is a big deal for me, for sure. So let's go through these. What was I wrong about with regards to Magic? Sorry, this document's a little bit scatterbrained, but it is what it is. Yeah, scrolls and those games with like the grid and shit, like I don't know, man. See, that's the thing. Like, I actually think like Magic's combat system, and I don't really hear a lot of people talk about this, but to me, Magic's combat system, like its actual gameplay system of like playing creatures and doing all that kind of stuff, is very good and like very like there's some things I would like to change about it. There's some things that bother me about it, for sure. But I think like the basic elements of it are actually like very well designed and smart and flexible and more interesting actually than a lot of those games with grids, because the grid, with grid card games, you have like these two universes of like your card world and your grid world, and they never really connect. It's like really hard to connect them. They almost have like an inherent two-screen problem. Whereas Magic is pure cards. They don't really do grid stuff at all, which I think that's the right call. I think that's the right way to do it. Even in like when I play Hearthstone Battlegrounds and things like that, like, and there's like adjacency all of a sudden, it's weird because I feel like when I see that, I feel like the developers don't really get what grids are supposed to do. And they just add these like really flat bonuses onto things. It reminds me of sometimes in those like 4X kind of games where it's like, oh, this research facility gets +1 for every adjacent mountain, and it's like that's not using a grid. That's just like this extremely flat a one-off thing. So anyway, I think Magic's basic gameplay is actually better. So let's actually talk about this first. Too shallow. Magic's gameplay is a lot better than I thought. It's deeper than I thought. There's, I plan to play a 10 rounds. What's it called? Like, mirror matches with E-Priest, Eli, and see who with the same deck against each other. And I'm now, when I first like said we should do that, I figured, we'd win like 50-50, maybe he'd win like 6 out of 10 games. But now, like, as I'm playing more, I'm seeing more like mistakes I'm making and things like that, and there's more to it than I thought. And I think there's more to it than actually really advanced players realize, because for advanced players, they got over that like 10, 20, 30 years ago. They learned this whole, a lot of this strategy concepts. They learned it like they almost can't even remember when they didn't know that stuff. So they maybe take it for granted, and to them it seems more shallow, and to them it is more, like what I would always, I think I looked it up recently, what I had said about Magic. I haven't talked about Magic much because I haven't really played it, but there was one thing that I did, like a podcast or something, where I talked about, the ultimate form of Magic would be the version where you just build a deck and then it like auto simulates the Yeah, we'll talk about deck building, and yes, I have done deck building. We'll talk about that. But like, it auto simulates the match because the match is just solved. That's kind of how I pictured it. And it's really not the case. Like, it's really, if you just come into Magic fresh, like, there's a lot to learn just about the game. Like, you can just play with one deck. You know, I used to think like, oh, you would just play with like one deck, like, you know, once or something. But I mean, at this point, I've played with certain decks 50, 60, 70 times. Granted, I'm playing against different, you know, opponent decks. I don't know how much, like, yeah, like a mirror match. But even a mirror match, like, if I was to play the 10 matches against Eli, I think it would be fine. It would work. It would work pretty well. Like, I would make some mistakes and stuff. Like, it wouldn't be totally solved. Like, so it's not solved. It's not, I shouldn't say it's not solved, but like, certainly for, it has a few months at the very least, has a few months worth of, you know, like, learning curve, which of course is, you know, massively extended with all the new content. All the content, I should say, / new content coming in, etc. Combinatorially, Magic the Gathering is nuts. There's like 20,000 cards total. Yeah, right. So, and I mean, I do think that's kind of a cheap way to extend that. Like, my version of Magic, which, you know, the next game I'm making is kind of my version of Magic, actually, would be like, let's focus a little more on the match and a little less on the, you know, like, on the deck building. So this is one thing. I think Magic's basic gameplay is just a lot better than I thought. Straight up. Granted, I did think it was like I thought it was like poker or like, you know, blackjack or something, basically. And I do think it is very random. But, so let's talk about the randomness. I think it is probably a little too random. Probably is a little too random. But maybe not, you know, but maybe not that much too random. Like, I think the randomness, like, there's particular cards and effects that can happen, which are just way too much of a swing. You know, like, wipe all creatures. Like, that to me, that's, I didn't even, you could call that an issue of randomness, or you could call it just an issue of, like, basic, you know, respecting the integrity of the game state kind of stuff. But those kinds of swings to me are sweepers, just a little much. And there's a couple of other things like that. There's this one unit that, like, actually too random. Yeah, so let me add another thing here. I'll put this somewhere else. Yeah, like a misconnotes, sort of, or like miscomments. Probably should put this at the bottom of the dock. Okay. Too random, not that much too random, not nearly as too random as I thought it would be. And, you know, like, let's yeah, so we can skip down to here real quick, because on randomness particularly, so I think Brett and I talked a lot about playfulness in games, and we've talked a little bit about Gem Wizard's tactics and how it feels, you know, kind of brain burny and intense to play it, more than I wanted that to be the case. And I think that randomness it has costs. Randomness has costs. It means that you have to play the game more times to get reliable feedback. Okay, so let's just put that up there. That is true. That has always been my concern with randomness. But randomness also, and I've always known this as well, I think, has benefits. it, well, what would I have previously said were the benefits? Which would be, I mean, obviously like input randomness, changing, you know, the variables and the specific things that are in play, creates an info horizon, we could say, limits calculation. So, I mean, you know, it might just be like, that's something I've written about this. Like, I have several articles on the info horizon and how that's important. And that's why this spread text has always been what I've thought. Because you need randomness to be there as like, well, you don't need, there are people who like chess and Go, and that's totally fine for me. And I think for a certain like kind of game, it's kind of experience, I suppose. You need that info horizon to like shrink the universe of shit that I have to worry about right now. And I guess my big takeaway, Commander is kind of way different, because in most formats you can play 4X. Yeah, I played a little bit of Commander. By the way, I want to talk about Magic the Gathering Arena, because I think that app is phenomenal. I'm like a huge fan of this app. I think it's really, really great. And that might be a big part of why I'm appreciating Magic so much. But I played every mode that's available in Arena at this point. With randomness, you don't calculate as deeply, but instead you calculate more widely, or you can if you want to. Yeah, I think that's a way to put it. I think the thing that I'm like coming to realize, you know, like the emotional experience of playing a pretty darn random game, it like creates this distance I can spell between you and the game. You are a little bit less invested in this match. And, you know, I think for a lot of my time doing game design and game design theory, I would think like, well, that's inefficient. You know, me of 5 years ago, let's say, that's inefficient. We can do like a Socratic, what are those, dialectic here? Efficient. Oh my god. I have to start over. Efficient. There we go. Why Magic over all these other CCG games I would think of as much better? Well, what? Like, give me some examples. Because I played some other ones, and I feel confident that Hearthstone is worse. Its basic gameplay is worse than Magic. And I can go through a few of these. I Gwent also, maybe I gotta go back to it, but it did not strike me as better than Magic. What else is better? What's a better CCG than Magic? I'd be curious. Other CCGs versus Magic. MTGA reinvented Magic. I played in real life hardcore for a few years, won a couple tournaments, stopped playing for 17 years, and started again with MTGA. Yeah, I sort of get that impression. I tried Hearthstone and Gwent. Yeah, Legends of Runeterra a little bit. I can't really speak to I haven't played enough Legends of Runeterra to like really say. I could see Legends of Runeterra maybe being, gameplay wise. There's a couple of things that I really appreciate about Magic. Playing spells on other players' turns is super empowering. Yeah, because like the thing is, all that like instance stuff and like all those like phases you have to skip through in Magic the Gathering Arena, which are very annoying. So yeah, I think all those phases add all this complexity, which like frankly like card games could use. Card games are like inherently very simple, and compared to games with like big grids and whatever, they're inherently, they don't have a lot of coupling, so they're inherently pretty simple. So you need that you need, I think, that extra level of like things like playing cards on other players' turns and things like that. I wouldn't say you need it, but like in the case of Magic, I think that's like a huge benefit to it. But I should play Legends of Runeterra. I think that should be one. You know, right now I'm trying to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. I'm reading through the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rules right now, and like actually there's some stuff in the basic Yu-Gi-Oh! Rules to me that I'm like, that's kind of cool. Like there's some cool stuff in there. So anyway, I kind of want to learn about, you know, more about all major CCGs. But I think part of now Crouch Mode says Netrunner and Ashes are the ones I'm playing right now. Oh yeah, I hate that inflated numbers thing that both Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon do, that where it's like instead of 1 it's 1,000. Very annoying. And then when you have actually big numbers, it's like, you know, you have to count the zeros. Yeah, silly stuff. But yeah, so Netrunner and Ashes to me are, if Netrunner and Ashes had apps that were like half as good as Magic the Gathering Arena, I'd probably play a lot of them. There's some stuff about Netrunner. I like Netrunner. I've always liked it. You know, I do think Netrunner, the whole like, is this face down card a 2-point victory point card that will make you win the game, or isn't it? Like thing is kind of dumb and like dopey. And I really hate in Netrunner that you can like hack someone's hand or their deck and just randomly get 2 victory points in a game where 7 victory points is the goal. That's some silly shit right there. That's, I mean, like, okay, there's randomness and there's just like dopey design, and Magic has a lot of dopey design, but not the basic rules of Magic aren't that dopey mostly. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, if you just want to, anything bad is good, up is down, you know, sure, you know, but like I'm not saying I have no standards or everything is the opposite of the real thing, or you know, like I'm just saying like this to me, what I'm really saying is like it's a shift in how much of something, you know. So like, yeah, dumb is not good, in my opinion. I mean, maybe dumb means different things to different people, but to me, like I appreciate good design, you know, like I like it when it feels like I can, oh, like this is a well-designed system, this is cool, you know. And I don't like it when it feels stupid, you know. Like, and now, so one of the things I really like about Magic compared to Hearthstone, for example, really quick, I should put this in a different section. This is and there's a few things like this in I guess we'll put this just here, it doesn't matter. There's a few things like this. I really don't like how in Hearthstone you can just target enemy creatures. You can just target enemy creatures for a bunch of reasons, but the biggest reason I don't like that is it turns the game into much more of like a, you know, who drew bigger numbers game, because all of your stuff is kind of coming out onto the field and then like activating its number power. Whereas with Magic, there's a lot more like sunk information. There's a lot more like with all the blocking. There's a lot more like those integers come in and then they just like get absorbed. I think that's really good. I also think yeah. Oh no, Yu-Gi-Oh! I used to play that a lot, but the power creep is insane in that game. It's always been the case, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Pendulum Summons was pretty hilariously out of control. I just read about that last night with queer morphs for a little while. MTGA took all the streamlining of Hearthstone, got rid of the sideboarding. No, they have sideboarding in MTGA, and got rid of the second game in a match. Second game in a match? What's that? My turn is mine and yours is yours. Such a huge win to me. I agree with that. I think there's something to that. I think, like, generally speaking, I think that's a good principle. You know, my turn's mine, your turn's yours. At the same time, I think card games can use the help. They can use, you know, like I simultaneously think that it's a little bit like messy and ugly that in Magic you can cast spells on the other player's turn and things like that. And at the same time, I feel like, yeah, but the net effect is an overall plus to the game because you now have a lot more complex possibility space. There was something else I wanted to say about Hearthstone. Another thing I did want to throw out there, like, these are just a couple thoughts on a couple of other CCGs. Let's just kind of put these in. We'll put this in the other notes. This would be LOR, Legends of Runeterra. I think it's good. This is once, like, there needs to be this, like, integer waste happening. Not maybe a great thing that you save your mana, that your unused mana at the end of the turn. Like, why? What, I don't know, like, why is that there? It's I have a hard time explaining it, but for some reason I feel like it's better if you waste that mana. Like, you know, to me it seems like a pretty fundamental thing in strategy games is you should have to fucking waste resources. You know, like, because it should be this Pyrrhic victory kind of yeah, integer waste. That is a good term. Yeah. Integer waste is good, actually. Well, I'm not even gonna put actually. This is a pretty well understood thing in strategy games. This is not even controversial, I think. But you know, particularly in these card games where you're drawing cards of different value and you're drawing cards that might be just better than the cards that I'm drawing, straight up. And so what we need is when those cards come into play, we need lots of like mitigating factors that kind of like tamp all that down, you know? So yeah, wasting mana, not being able to just target whatever creature you want. I mean, that's another thing that sucks too. And it means like every creature card is now also a removal card, which, you know, removal cards to me are one of the worst things in Magic. I mean, I think you probably need a little bit of that, but it's just totally out of control. Yeah, I understand that. There are only some unused mana, 3, and only for spells, but still, I think if you just, maybe if you just, I mean, again, I haven't played Legends of Runeterra very much. I'm sort of speaking generally about these kinds of games, but that's something that I look at with like a side eye. You know, I'm sort of skeptical of that. There are different modes, but Arena is one game. Traditional is best of 3 with sideboarding. Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're talking about Standard. That's the name of the game in Magic. Right. Well, yeah, so they still have Traditional in Arena. I was thirsty. Talking a lot, you like get very thirsty very fast. Integer waste should be deep by default. Saving mana should be a bonus from an ability or class or perk. Yeah, exactly. Like saving mana via something like treasures is cool. I love treasures. I think treasures are like a really good, really cool little design atom. So that's, you know, when I play Magic also, like I have a couple of conflicting feelings. Let's put this, sort of organize this a little bit, put this in this random comments thing. You know, I have a couple of conflicting feelings because there's all these cool ideas and like good things, and then there's all these like crappy things too. And even the good things, I'm like, this could be so much more. But nothing can be, you know, everything is limited in how cool it can be because the system has to allow for everything. So like, you know, to me, Magic ultimately is, I would like a game that's more structured than Magic, but I also think that we can get into this next. I want to hit up all these. So we hit that one. Gameplay's better than I thought. So let's do number 4 next. Customizability felt like a lie. And like to an extent it still does. Hearthstone's nice and simple. There's no state. That's not what you want though. You don't want no state. Again, you can just play slots if you just want no states, dumb as possible, random as possible, just play slots. I mean, maybe you should be playing slots. I don't know if you've tried it. You can, there's a lot of digital, like there's mobile games that are like, you know, coin pushers and stuff like that. You might want to check some of those out. Definitely not for me though. Like, you know, they're much too removed from like strategy game world. Yeah, Brain Burny topic. Okay, well, we can skip to it. I do want to talk about these, but let's talk about Brain Burny and how it's changing my thoughts on design and customizability. So yeah, we started this and I got sidetracked. The emotional experience of playing a pretty darn random game creates this distance between you and the game. You are a little bit invested in this, less invested in this match. Me of 5 years ago would have yelled, "That's inefficient." Me of now, yes, but there are also other benefits. And like overall, I find myself drawn to games, you know, like drawn to more random games. Both more random than what I sort of profess, or, you know, sort of profess to like, I guess, and also more random than the games I make. So, you know, I could talk about Gem Wizards here, which, you know, I intended, Gem Wizards is my first game that has output randomness in the combat. You know, it has Fog of War, it has, you know, randomly generated maps, and it has output randomness in the combat, a little bit. And I don't believe in efficiency. I think it's impossible to completely not believe in efficiency. Like, there's obviously going to be a limit, a point at which you're like, okay, that's too inefficient. But you may have more of a flexibility on inefficiency than other people. Like for you, if a game goes 4 hours and gives you some unreliable outcome where you're like, yeah, I guess I won, but like there was a table flip at the end. I think you might be okay with that, but like then if it was like twice as long, you might be like, all right, come on now, 8 hours for like a table flip outcome. I don't know about that. So I think everyone has a line in terms of efficiency, but that's going to like probably vary from person to person. Okay, so there are other benefits, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so Gem Wizards Tactics. I took steps to make it more random than my previous games. More random than I think any game I've made before. I'm trying to think. Like, I don't think I've ever made a game as random as Gem Wizards Tactics. But at the same time, Gem Wizards Tactics also has the most... but I think that you need to... Yeah, so, like, you need to... When you're talking about, like, how random is the game, you also need to, like, factor in, like, how sort of complex and deep the game is. But it's also the most probably complex and deep game I've made. So, like, that means that the randomness, in order to keep up with all the deterministic sort of tactical strategy crunchy stuff, needed to be a lot higher if I was to maintain the same ratio. Table flip is a foreseeable end state. Well, like, you know, I'm just saying, like, imagine a game that's like super long and super random. That's all I'm saying. So, like, you don't know that there's going to be a table flip, but, like, there's going to be enough, like, bullshit random things that happen throughout the match that, like, it's going to, you know, it's who wins is going to be completely meaningless. Oh, you know, so I think, I guess, like, my, you know, Gem Wizards Tactics in practice is more brain burny than I want in a game. when you lose all your stars on the last turn. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And how long is a match of Mario Party? I've never played Mario Party, but I'm guessing not more than an hour long, right? Maybe, I don't know. You know, so like, I guess what I'm saying is like going forward, I probably will be making more random games. Now how to like incorporate that into like theory and how to sort of talk about that. I think it's this complexity thing. Like, the more complex your game is, the more, let's talk about this. Like the more complex your game is, the more sort of like, you know, more of a buffer it has for randomness. Because there's more, you know, there's more like spots where I can imbue the system and the state with what's it called? Meaning, right? Because like I have intentionality. I'm like, it has the meaning of like, I'm pursuing this win state. Redshift says, I love the GWT brain burn. So fun and satisfying to come up with some cool tactic. Yeah, I think like, and I think certain people like that. I'm just talking about for me personally, you know, I'm not as drawn to play Gem Wizards Tactics. I mean, maybe part of that is I'm the developer, you know, and so it's like, but I don't know, like, you know, I've played a lot of my own games. But I think that the brain burny, I like Gem Wizards Tactics. I think it's great. But I do think that like it could probably stand to be a little more random. And I think it would probably be a little bit more of a pleasing experience across the board, maybe. Not for everybody. Maybe not for you, Reshiv. But, you know, maybe for me, it would be more fun if it was a little more wild and swingy. And part of that is this distance, you know. When people say brain burning, I think they kind of, I don't know, I just have this general sense that like people don't really want, generally speaking, people don't want to feel pressure. You know, they don't want to feel like, oh, I have to like figure this shit out or I'm gonna like fail. They want a feeling of distance. And I think that's why I think something like League of Legends is so popular and why Magic is so popular. They want that, they want to play a game, but they don't want to play a game that like, you know, they don't want to be like up to their neck in game. They want to be like up to their hip in game, if that makes sense. Let me write that down. People want to be up to their hips in game, in a game, not up to their neck. A game having an insufficient, maybe you could say, or like we can, you know, randomness in a game can sort of determine where that waterline is going up to. Yeah, like neck hip theory. There you go. Yeah. You know, because it's a very casual experience playing, even when it's really hard, and even when there's like stakes and stuff, like draft mode in Magic is like you have to like pay $5 to fucking play it, which I hate, and we can talk about the business model type shit. But like then there's like stakes, and there's actually a lot to think about, and especially when you're new to the game. The onboarding, we haven't even talked about that. Onboarding in Magic is not great. Onboarding in League of Legends is also not great. What is it with these games that are super, super freaking popular and have horrible, horrible onboarding? Like clearly some like onboarding just doesn't matter or something. Like that's an interesting note. So yeah, I don't know. Tribound, do you have any thoughts here so far on what I'm talking about? I think you were asking me to expand more on this. Yeah. You know, I guess you could think about something like chess, and chess has people who love it. There's a lot of people who love chess. But there's a lot more people who are like, no thanks. Like it's too you're up to your neck when you play chess. You're like, oh, oh, you know, like you're like drowning. And just trying not to fuck up really hard. The brain burniness comes from elsewhere. Yeah, I think it comes from two places. Well, it's a combination of so I think here's where brain burniness comes from. Comes from having a certain amount of deterministic complexity in a game state. I think that's it. Right? Because the deterministic things are the things that you can actually control. And in Gem Wizard's Tactics, yeah, okay, we added like, you know, a little bit of like randomness in the combat, but like movement, positioning, all that stuff, totally deterministic. So a lot of it is like really within your control. Unboarding doesn't matter. Oh, onboarding. Because you're a new player for a constantly shrinking fraction of your time with the game. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think as an indie, I worry about onboarding when what I really should be worried about is marketing. Like actually the real onboarding is actually just like marketing. Do you get in people's faces and get installed on people's computers? That's the real onboarding. Yeah, so this is where I think brain burniness comes from. Tribound, do you disagree? Reshiv says, poker feels kind of brain burning to me in a bad way, but still pretty darn random, but you gotta do the math. But yeah, there's a couple of different types of like brain burning. Like there's like arithmetic-y sort of things. Like I think poker is, you know, like you have to do the counting the cards or whatever. But I think that's a different kind of brain burning than Gem Wizards or chess. I think that for some people playing Gem Wizards feels like playing chess. The brain burniness comes from complexity when it's allowed to foster. I'm not sure what foster means. But I think maybe you said yeah, so maybe you agree that this is kind of roughly like what you're talking about. Yeah. I still I really want to make a Gem Wizards like mode that's like a tiny grid with like way more random, or I don't know, maybe this should be a sequel or something. But yeah, I have like all these different ideas for like an auto chess version of Gem Wizards where you're like, you know, you're drafting units and then like they sort of auto battle. I think that's another one. Auto chess, like that's another example. People just want like Jesus take the wheel, you know, they don't want to be in there like microing a fucking unit to do all these things. That's another reason that I think you know, like the traditional RTSs like the StarCraft likes are dead. Is like most people just don't want that level of like up to their neck like kind of stress. Really, that kind of comes down to what I'm talking about. Like, a lot of games are just stressful to play. Chess, StarCraft. What else? Any ancient abstracts. Some Euro games, maybe. I heard someone say I'll never make an auto chess just a few weeks ago. Well, most people will never make an auto chess, so that's not hard to believe. A recent Pew poll said that 99.8% of Americans will, for example, never make an auto chess game. Kind of makes you think, you know? But yeah, a lot of games are just really stressful to play. Did I say I'll never make an auto chess? I don't know if I said that, but in general, I'm not big on, I don't love that design pattern. So maybe I said that. Yeah, I was also thinking about another Euro game that I appreciate a lot is Tigris and Euphrates. And the other day, I had my cell phone. I was like stuck somewhere. I had my phone, and I have Tigris and Euphrates on here. I never fucking play it. And part of that is like the app is kind of shitty, and it's pretty shitty. It's like I don't know, it's pretty shitty, but it gets the job done. It's totally playable, and I never want to play it. And I would much rather play like there's all kinds of stuff I would rather play. Race for the Galaxy on my iPad. I still play like Lost Cities by Reiner Knizia, which is like just a really simple, like solitaire like kind of card game against the bot. The bot's pretty good in their defense. But yeah, that's another one. Lost Cities. I played so much Lost Cities. And there's something very relaxing about not having too many choices. I think that's part of it too. Too many choices. Maybe sometimes people say analysis paralysis. This sounds like it's implicating turn time. Like, oh, I'm paralyzed because I have so many things to do. I'm like the game's taking too long. I'm taking too long on my turn because, I have so many possible options. I have to think about them all. That's maybe a problem in a real time, a turn-based game with real people, tabletop. That's a practical concern. But, it's, but the real issue, but another, I suppose, real issue here is that it's stressful. And like, life is pretty stressful. And like, I don't know. I think in general, people want to play games and just sort of be relaxed and like not feel stressed out, and I think Magic is actually kind of in a sweet spot. In my opinion, Magic the Gathering, in terms of stress, complexity, brain burniness, is in something like a sweet spot. Like the total turn off your brain thing is like AFK Arena or like, Coin Pusher. And those things are very, very popular. Like, actually, the kinds of games we are talking about here will never compete with the games that take, like, zero brain power and are just, like, click and see numbers go up, kind of really just the most anti-brain burning softwares imaginable. I think those will always be more popular than any kind of strategy games. But for me, I think Magic is, like, kind of in a little bit of a sweet spot. I could see myself making games that are like a little more systemic, a little more brain burning maybe than Magic, a little more, deterministic. But I guess my big shift here is like seeing what I'm looking for, what I'm trying to make, as being a little more random than I had thought previously. So I did want to talk about the bad business model and the customizability thing real quick. I got to go in about like 15 minutes or so. So customizability, I never was attracted to this because I'm like, it's bullshit. I can't just make like a dragon's deck or a skeleton's deck or whatever, or come up with some cool thematic deck. It's going to be inefficient and crappy. When you want to minimize brain burn, yeah, but you also want to do other things too. If you only want to minimize brain burn, then Coin Pusher. Right? But you don't only want to minimize brain burn. That's why I'm saying Magic is kind of in a sweet spot because it does have some of that crunchy strategy gamey kind of stuff, but also a very low amount of brain burn compared to something like Tigris and Euphrates or Gem Wizard's Tactics. So yes, you want to minimize brain burn, but you also want to optimize for other things too. At least I do. Otherwise I'd be making Coin Pushers. So, okay, customizability felt like a lie. Yeah. And I still think this is partially true. Maybe I don't even have a very coherent thought here, but this is just one of the things that did bother me. But I found myself able to enjoy customizability in Magic. I'm not sure how. I guess it's because, you know what helps a lot with customizability? So I sort of pictured customizability happening only at the highest levels of play against against top players, basically, which is not how it works in practice. In practice, if you're playing IRL with friends, or if you're playing what is Welcome Aboard reference to? The customizability thing. In practice, if you're playing IRL with friends, or if you're playing with matchmaking, and I had this like kind of eureka moment, which is like, I feel sort of dumb for it, but like when I realized that Magic the Gathering Arena had matchmaking, and particularly when I learned that I don't know if this is just in play mode, but at least in play mode, they have they actually factor in the strength of your deck, like I guess how many rares and things like that it has, as part of the matchmaking process. So that is like a total game changer. Now, if that's the case, if you're actually going to put me against someone with a similar level, power level of deck, well, then customizability becomes like not a lie. Customizability is real, becomes real. It's only not real, as I think Tribound is saying, pros have the calcified meta, right? So the pros know, like, okay, no, like there's like 5 or 6, decks that these are the decks that you have to use, and that's it. Well, I don't think they can accurately, hello, Steven. I don't think they can accurately calculate deck strength, but I think that they do it with like, things like how many rares it has. Because like, honestly, like from what I'm seeing, rares and mythics in particular, like they're better. They're just like better across the board, kind of, which goes into this, which we haven't talked about yet, which that's bad. And that's something that absolutely I would fix going forward if I were to make a Keith Magic like. I would not have a bad business model. I would instead go for a good business model. Revolutionary. But yeah. Of course, rares are better. Some of them 4 times as good. Right, exactly. So that's how the matchmaking can determine. But of course, it's not 100% accurate. But like it helps. It gets you somewhere. and then that plus matchmaking plus the basic randomness of the game means that your deck can kind of work. Even if it's like a little bit suboptimal, your deck can kind of work. Like it's not going to just like hit into a brick wall. Pardon me. Yeah, for the same mana cost. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Just overall card strength, considering mana cost and everything. Or at least appear like it's working. And then also customizability is less of a lie when you consider that a game is not really too shallow. Like actually there's, if a player's a lot better than me, like, Eli or something like that, I think that he could take a deck that kind of sucks and like he might be able to just beat me with it. We can talk a little bit more about appear like it's working. Because I mean, that's what randomness is. Appear like it's working is the essence of randomness, right? It's like creating this, and that's where when I was talking about, where was it? Where was my Socratic dialectic Here, yeah. Me 5 years ago, that's inefficient. So yeah, we sort of talked about that a little bit. I think maybe you missed that part, Stephen. If they could calculate and compensate for deck strength, wouldn't that make customizability a lie? Because then your deck building skill doesn't matter in the sense of affecting your chances to win. Yeah, but that's not right. I mean, it turns into a different lie, right? So there's two possible lies. The two potential lies of customizability. One, you can customize to make a stronger deck. And two, you can customize to be creative and expressive, you know, explore new space. I had always thought that, like, obviously this is true. And, but actually what Regiv points out is that if you have matchmaking, this actually becomes a little bit less true, which is, I like that. This is stupid. This is dumb. Like, one should never have been a thing. And once we have the internet and everything, forget it. One is totally kill it, you know, kill it with fire. So yeah, one is, you're right. It harms this, which I think has never been the great thing about customizability anyway. Although, you know, of course, some people have enjoyed it, and, you know, some people just like, and maybe that's been a big part of the business model too, frankly, is like people are buying fucking decks so that they can get booster packs so they can get a stronger deck, which is pretty fucked up. I mean, like, Magic is the original pay to win, right? Maybe not the original. I suppose you could say, like, gambling games in general. Yeah, that's a bad thing. Not at all sure that is the essence of randomness. Yeah, I'm not sure either. I'm just throwing shit out there. Solo games solve the creative exploration aspect. Yeah, so that is something that I'm excited about doing. Is I'm making this a one-player game, which basically, well, actually, with a one-player environment, this makes sense again. The number one makes sense again, and number two is also doable. Like, you have a little bit more flexibility in both of those regards. Okay, so yeah, we should also just talk about the bad business model. I mean, I think others have talked about this, but there shouldn't be, my opinion has not changed on this at all. There should not be a rarity system of cards at all, period. End of story. Right? I mean, now I suppose it's a good business model in that it actually makes you money. It's a good, you know, and that is hard to do, I guess. But it seems harmful to your game, and, you know, kind of like abusive to your players. Rarity is to balance limited. Not sure I followed that exactly. Smoganivia main. Banshan says some customization happens on the deck side where you can express your meta prediction skill. Right. If you take that away, you might as well get rid of limited. So only make them exist in limited. I don't understand. How is rarity there to balance limited? Why couldn't you have a limited format that's all commons? I don't understand that. But yeah, I don't think there should be a rarity system at all. And certainly, and here's another thing. You could do a rarity system and still have all the cards be balanced, right? There's no reason that because a mythic card is a mythic and they print fewer of them, that has to be stronger than the other cards. That is just pure pay to win shit. The answer is fuck limited. Why is limited sacred as a format? Limited format. Rares are stronger, so they show up. Hello, Starshot. Rares are stronger, so they show up less in draft or sealed. Why is Commander Sacred as a format? Because some people like it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not following the thread of that conversation exactly. But my point is, you can definitely do, if you have to do rarity for some reason, just don't make the rares stronger. Make them the same strength as the commons. Now, again, that goes into the business model. So, and that's really where all this shit is coming from, I think, to begin with, is the business model. Even if that's not originally what the designer intended, that's how like it ended up playing out. All right, so like, I mean, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. So let's do a little question and answer time. And if there's some things that you guys want me to like elaborate more on, I will also skim around the document so that people who are just joining can catch up. The thread is, limited is done with drafting cards. You have stronger cards show up less often in packs, so they're less common in drafts. So just get rid of them entirely if you don't want them in drafts. It makes drafting better to have rarity. I don't understand that. Why is that better? That sounds worse. Like, if they're strong and rare and some people just randomly get them in drafting, like, that's not good. Why do we want that? Let's have, like, can anyone answer this question for me? I'm going to put it on the screen so that people can question. Would, draft limited be bad with all commons? Like, and also, by the way, if you need to, put 2 sets or something into the mix to increase the number of cards, the variety of cards, that's fine. I'm just saying, like, do these formats need rares? It seems weird to me that they would need it. The Crouch Mode says, make a box with 4 of each card in the set for constructed players and regular booster packs for drafting. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you could do that too. Yeah. Do I have any good takes on the game? I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of takes. You get to decide whether they're good or not. I think they're all good. So. Do you think that if every card is very good, it would be a bit easier to make a good deck without understanding the game? Yeah, I mean, that's like one of the fundamental crimes of Magic, in my opinion, is like not only not trying to balance the cards, but actually actively trying to unbalance the cards. Like the rarity system and how they approach it is actively setting out to have some cards be better than other cards. I think that all the cards should be balanced as best as possible. That's going to be hard to like achieve, but it's one thing to fail to achieve it exactly. Like there's always going to be some best cards, but you should at least do your best to try, set out to make it that all the cards are balanced. What pisses me off so much is like I will be looking through the deck builder sometimes. It's like such a feeling, just such a gross feeling when I see there's this blue card that's a bird. It costs 1 mana. It's a flying bird. Okay. And it just has flying. That's all it has. And it's like 1/1. And there's another bird that has the same thing, 1 mana, 1/1, flying, and also scry 1 when it enters the battlefield. And I'm like, what? Why do both of these cards exist? Why does the card without the scrying exist? They're the exact same fucking card, and one of them just has scrying. Like, that to me is just bad. That's just bad. No excuse for that, except for like, business model shit, business demon shit. We don't do good takes here. Steven says, it'd probably be harder to understand the game if the cards didn't have a label saying this is a good card on them. Like if all cards are pretty good, surely harder to make a good deck than if you can know rares are good, I guess. But that's like a pretty costly, like, no, actually, I don't think that's true. It's not harder to make a good deck if all our cards are pretty good. It's hard, it's not harder because you just put the cards in and then it's a good deck, pretty much. Like, unless, I mean, there's combo things and things like that you got to worry about. Megamon says, I think it's worth pointing out that rarity isn't the reason why the business model is crazy. There are inexpensive rares and expensive commons. Also, a real-world healthy example of a fair business model would be Legend of the Runeterra. We're assuming you had no cards and wanted to make the most expensive deck. No cards, I want to make the most expensive deck would be $55 for one deck. Jesus Christ. That's a lot for one deck. I mean, okay. That's like the cost of a whole video game, like a whole AAA video game right there. Just for one deck. Like, and you play, a lot of decks, I feel like, in these games. That's like the point of them. But okay, I don't know. The thing is that some rares are actually bad and some commons are staples. Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, I agree. $55. Yeah, that's a lot. But the answer directly, yeah, you can draft with just commons. They call it Cube Popper, and it can be pretty fun. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. I don't see why. $599 US, 599 US dollars. All right. Well, Keith, if you decide to make a card game, it would have few enough cards that every card would have to cover a very unique role. So the problem of having bad cards wouldn't be something to worry about. Well, so my approach, and I'll talk about this more like next time. I'm going to have I'm working on some videos now actually that like kind of introduce the game to like, venture capital people and stuff like that. But the basic idea is imagine Magic, imagine one player. So you're playing kind of against bots, I guess you could say. But there's a little bit more down on the table to begin with. It doesn't start with a blank table. So you start with like a few like hero units down, and there's a couple of other dynamics, but it's just a little bit more structural. There's a little more, and then yeah, you can do a little more with each card. In Magic, you can only do like, most cards literally just, they only do one thing and you can't do anything else with them. Almost never. Like once in a blue moon, there will be a card that says like discard another card to draw 2 cards or something. But like very rarely are cards able to be used in multiple ways. So that's something that I'm really interested in looking at. But yeah, also at the same time, I don't want to get into Brain Burn City. So that's something I'm going to be really considering next time with the next game that I make. And I also, I really want to like figure out a mode for Gem Wizard's Tactics that's, I feel like there would be a really cheap, very fast to make mode, like just some basic rule changes that could really reduce the brain burniness and still maintain what's great about Gem Wizards for the most part. So anyways, that's pretty much what I had to say about Magic today. I am going to be playing also tonight with E-Priest. He's going to be helping me at midnight. We're going to have Midnight Hunt tonight. That's the name of the current set in Magic the Gathering. And we're going to do a draft. And Eli's going to walk me through it. And we're going to have a good time. And then tomorrow at, I don't know what time exactly, Daniel Garcia 14. It's so weird to see you liking Magic the Gathering now. Your name looks familiar to me, Daniel Garcia, but I missed the game design streams. Well, this is one of them right here. This was I think this was like a decently substantial one. I will definitely upload this to YouTube. It is weird to see me liking Magic the Gathering, and I'm feeling a lot of like, I'm feeling a lot of feelings about it, because I feel regret that I didn't try it sooner, I guess, and like try to really get into it sooner. I didn't really have necessarily, I've never had a friend in real life who liked Magic. So like that, part of it's just like I wasn't in the right circle. And until Magic the Gathering Arena, it wouldn't have really been possible. I guess I could have gone to like a board game store, but like I'd totally have had to do that on my own. It would have been like a big, thing. The reason is the deck you might actually have fun with, unlike the VR. The number of games you get for those amount of money isn't trivial. One Magic deck minus sign mountain of board games and digital games. Yeah, I mean, I'll also throw out here, like, I've bought a couple of booster packs in real life, actual booster packs. And, you know, it was funny, I was looking at eBay, and because I was like, I would actually buy like someone's lot of like 1,000 Magic cards, you know, and I was thinking, like, well, actually, when you do that, that's also like a big random booster pack. You don't know what's in there. I mean, maybe some people went through the process of like writing down every freaking card in there, but like, it's kind of interesting to think about like a used giant lot of Magic cards, and like that person's not doing anything evil or business demon wise by selling you, just saying like, hey, there's a big old box of, you know, Magic cards. I guess you could say like, a lot, I want them to write down what cards are in there, but if it's like 1,000 cards, it's very unreasonable. And if you think of them like Legos, like if someone sells you like a giant box of Legos, assorted Legos, you know, it's also very unreasonable to request that I want to know how many, you know, 3x2 reds are in there, and shit like that. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a little more complicated, the booster pack thing, than I originally was thinking. And I also think, like, you know, I don't have a problem if there's a game I like. I don't have a problem throwing them up to $20 to $50. You know, like, I don't love doing it for like big, huge, massive, evil corporations. I really try to avoid doing that. Oh, hey, No More Birds. We're just about to close down. You should definitely catch up on this one. This was a good one. Yeah. So I don't know. I have a bunch of thoughts about booster packs as well. Even Legos have pieces that are better than others. That's for sure. Those shitty pieces that are like a fully formed thing that can't connect to anything. Terrible Lego. You have a pen to add keywords or whatever if you don't like how some cards are not balanced. Yeah, I guess. It's like, at that point, I really just would rather just design my own game. You know what I mean? Like, sure, yes, you could, but it's like, I don't know that it's not balanced, you know, like it's a hard thing to know. And that's why we have specialized game designers. And maybe I could do that because I am a specialized game designer. Most people probably wouldn't know what to write on the card. Yeah. And so that's why we hire game designers, is because it's their job to get that right, or get that as close to right as possible. And they're specialized to do that. Anyways, yeah, this is about an hour and a half, so I'm going to wrap up now. Thanks for watching, and I will tonight, No More Birds, if you're still here, come by tonight at midnight. We're going to do a midnight hunt, limited Magic the Gathering arena draft with Eli, E-Priest, and that's going to be super fun. And then tomorrow at 3, I think, but maybe we're going to move it up. I'll talk to Hollow. We are going to play some Star Wars CCG. So we got all kinds of Keith content coming your way. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching, and I will see you soon.